your whole attitude through this shows me you're not actually listening to learn or to refute an argument. You've shouted over me several times. You're disregarding every piece of information I bring you.
Yeah,
You're
I'm a
not
real.
looking at it from a well. I did I say that?
No, I did. Now, can you finish your point? Can we just
Right.
start with, can we read your message?
Yeah.
We can use that as like a starting point and then we'll jump from there.
Sure.
So, what should I call you? What should your name be?
You can call me Daniel.
Dan.
Here,
Okay.
I'll change it in your server.
Sure, that's fine. I just didn't know if you wanted me to call you Grim because that's your username, or Daniel. Okay, Daniel. You reached out to me. You sent me this message a few days ago. You put at Dylan Burns, and I do have to ask. You added me in the DM.
Yeah.
Do you do that for everybody? It's a really assertive action to add someone in their DMs.
No, it was I've messaged in, I think it's Talk to Dylan or something. I've made multiple comments in your YouTube videos and stuff like that. It was just
Yeah, you talk about it here. It says, are you going to address facts, or are you going to ignore them and keep lying to people? I'm not trying to be malicious, but you have ignored everything I posted in debate and your YouTube comments, and I have provided sources for every claim I make that directly refute your comments in various videos. If you really portray yourself as a truth seeker, you have to defend your claims. It is not okay.
Right.
Just don't expect anyone that isn't trying to virtue signal to agree with you. I'd really like to personally debate with you and see where you truly stand on the issue. Okay. So,
Right.
let's just jump right into it. What's your problem?
Okay, well, all this stemmed, I think, if you look in debate, it said, because I just watched your critique on Asmongold, and you were telling, granted, I
Are
don't
you a
really
fan
even
of
watch.
him?
No, I don't. I
Oh,
was
okay.
about to say I don't even really watch them. It's just I'm coming from somebody who's like I don't really give a damn about politics. I'm not MAGA. I don't really think Trump has made the best decision on everything. I just look at what's in front of me and form my own opinion.
hmm
But a lot of the stuff you said in that Aspen Gold video, I actually sat here and wrote it down. It was like 63 points that I had a problem with. That
63
you,
points. My God. How
yeah,
long was the
well,
video I even did? I did I guess it was
hour and
significant.
48 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
63. Okay, well, you want to start with point
but
one? I guess that's the place to start.
well, the critique of that is like you were sitting there saying things about Asman being disingenuous or just not knowing, and that's kind of the frame that I was coming at you with. Is like what you were saying. I'm pretty sure you're more informed than Asman is, but after going back, the comment you made about people not researching it and just talking is like actually made me go and do the research.
Okay.
And from what I found is, I guess we'll start with the memorandum since everybody makes a point on that. I don't know if you can see my screen or not.
Oh,
But
you're
it's sure.
sharing screens? Okay.
Yeah, so I can bring up
Okay, one
up
moment.
points. Yeah, it's
Okay.
so I can show you where I got my sources and everything.
Okay, I'll share
This
this.
is this is the memorandum downloaded from Brussels. It's a PDF file, straight from the Brussels website.
Okay.
Or my bad, that's the expenditures. We'll get there later. This is from
I think this is
registration
right
with
now.
registration with the Secretary of the United Nations. So this is from the PDF from the United Nations.
Okay.
And these are the points. And if you want me to, after I get done, I can send you all of these and you can go through them yourself.
Okay.
Everybody says we broke our part of the memorandum, and which is also why you got to make the differentiation between assurances and guarantees. Assurances, we pretty much told them we would not send direct military help, like no military aid is assurances.
Is
And
that
it says,
really? Is that clarified in this? They say assurances means no military help, only diplomatic.
uh, actually, it does. Number 4 here. Russian Federation, United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, and United States reaffirmed their commitment to seek immediate UN Security Council. So if a problem arises, we bring it straight to the UN. Action to provide assistance to Ukraine as a non-nuclear weapon state party to the treaty. Yeah, you can read the non-proliferation, which is getting rid of your nukes, pretty much. If it should become a victim of an act of aggression or object of threat of aggression in which nuclear weapons are used.
Okay.
At the point in time here, nuclear weapons have not been used. And my point here is the military aid we did send, because in Crimea, or 2014 with the annex of Crimea, we sent them billions of dollars in equipment and finances for training everybody. There's several joint programs that was started, as somebody in your comments yelled at me for, about France sending uh, people to help train them. I was like, you do realize that's only one program, right? There's what, ICG, JG, Britain head of operation. I don't have those pulled up, but I can pull them up. But that was my point on the memorandum.
So
So
the memorandum.
by
Uh.
by by this, we haven't broken it.
Okay. So when I think the guarantee and assurance and this and that, personally, I think it's all bullshit. I think it's mostly diplomatic doublespeak in order to slip away from commitments. If somebody says, "Oh, I guarantee I'll help you," "Oh, I assure you I'll help you," when somebody, these differences, the only difference is one gives the United States more wiggle room to basically say, "Well, we don't really need to." And so when I say that, like if I was to come to you, "Oh yeah, I'll help you." Now I didn't make a strong agreement 100% I'm going to do this, we're on the paperwork, but
Right.
then I don't help you later. You could reasonably come out and say that, Dylan said he would help me, but he didn't. Right? Now you can maybe not say Dylan signed this agreement that said that he would send this amount of aid to do this and this amount of military aid, but the idea that I would come to your aid was assured. And so I understand the diplomatic tools that are being used here, but I don't like their excuse. I don't like the excuse for the use of the tools because I think it's snaky. You either
I
say you're going
understand.
to help them or you say you're not going to help them. And so
But
that's the
how?
first thing, right? So before we even get into
Right.
like whether we said, "Hey, do you agree that like if we assured them we'd help them, so we don't really need to," is not a good excuse?
But the argument here isn't that we haven't helped them. The argument here is putting
But you
boots
brought
on the
well
ground.
first you brought up assurances, like, and does that matters at all? Why does that matter?
Right. Well, assurance and guarantee. Yeah. Granted, I understand it's a sleight of hand tactic, but I'm just saying by that.
But no. I'm saying that it's bullshit. I'm saying that even if you tried to make it a sleight of hand tactic, it's still bullshit. If I said I was gonna help you and then later I'm like, like that, because I didn't say I was really gonna help you, it's bullshit. Now, if you
Yeah, I
accept,
agree
yes,
with
the
it.
United States is being snaky and we should have actually fulfilled that guarantee, that's one thing, but it's not a defense for not helping Ukraine. It's saying the United States can act snaky with its behavior. And I don't think it's an excuse. The spirit of an assurance was we would help them if they were attacked, that we would
And
help
we did.
give them support. Not significantly. I mean,
You
this is the
I
problem I
Okay.
have is that when they invaded Crimea, we told the Ukrainians to stand down. We when it was time for the United States to use its real diplomatic weight to test the Russians, our support, while Trump exaggerates when he says Obama sent them blankets, our support was we could give them radar systems so they could see themselves being bombed by the Russians. Our support was like medical kits. Our support was nothing that could physically defend the villages that were being attacked. And when Russia
Mm,
continued to expand it, our support did not expand in retrospect in any way. For example, when Russia directly invaded Ukraine after the Russian attempt of like fermenting a rebellion that would take over the East failed, they moved their soldiers directly in and started fighting the Ukrainian armed forces, meaning they were fighting both these Donbass separatists and the Russian government at the same time. And the United States did very little to comparatively nothing. And that policy continued through the Obama administration, through the Trump administration, and then into the Biden administration. And in fact, the only time when we finally did try to send any lethal capacity to aid whatsoever, and that did happen under the Trump administration, it wasn't due to Donald Trump. It was due to Congress, and Trump tried to freeze it. He tried to stop it from being sent over. So it was still the White House doing its best to stop Congress from even fulfilling what it assured 30 years ago. And
yeah,
and
but what
the
side
reason
of
all this
Congress
matters,
did
it
that?
matters more than us just sending like some radars for them getting bombed, is they gave up their atomic arsenal. And all
I
they had to base their security was our assurance. And
Oh, okay.
that's a
I
lot.
don't, because that's actually another point I'm gonna bring up. But the point here is 2014, we did do something to help. We sent billions of dollars to help reform their military. Do you think they would have done as well without our help, without that intelligence, without all the weapons and the funds that we put into their army?
I think even half-assing it helps. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you got to understand, because the whole crux of that was we didn't put U.S. boots on the ground.
Is that what I
Now, what?
said?
No, no, that's what Zelensky is pushing for, and like
That's not
I'll
what well,
explain
he's
that
not
as I
pushing
go.
for troops to fight the Russians back. He's pushing for once the war is over, for there to be a physical deterrent on the ground, stopping the Russians from invading again, and U.S.
No,
troops would
no,
provide that.
well, we'll get there, like because like I said, there's multiple things. That's why I was like, eh, half hour's rough. Anyway, that's pretty much the memorandum. It's like by the memorandum, we have not broke the memorandum.
Also, not only I think we broke it again recently. Actually, we broke it a second time recently. Technically, another part. If you read the whole memorandum, you read the section about
You're going to
economic
go over
coercion.
it
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Okay, so the section about economic coercion. Not only did the Russians violated that in 2014, so that's long violated
Well,
by the Russians.
the
But
yeah, they broke that a long time ago.
yeah,
This
so
is
what? Well, I'm not.
number
Okay, well,
three.
you know, just okay.
Well, number three, I'm gonna like
Yeah, but
it's
can I
contingent
finish my
on number four.
sentence, maybe?
Yeah, you can finish your sentence, but
Thank you.
like I said, I only got half an hour.
Well, do you? I told you if we can do a little bit longer if it's necessary, but I'm just trying to say that the United States is engaged in economic coercion against the Ukrainians. Ukrainians economic offered the United States an economic deal to share in their economic wealth, and the response was, "Give us half of all of your resources, or we're just going to abandon you." That's economic coercion. That was the ask for Ukraine's mineral wealth in exchange for us even attempting to help hold the front line in place and maintain our previous commitments for support, which we have reiterated on multiple occasions. That is not only the Russians violating the economic coercion section of that. I would say that's the American government. Now, thankfully, that was renegotiated into something that's at least semi feasible and workable, but that was economic coercion. And so I would say that
Uh,
doing that in order to try to get Ukraine to concede to territorial concessions is in violation of the Budapest Memorandum as well.
well, that only extends on because if number four, if we didn't break number four, right? Because we're under no obligation to stop
Well,
them from a conventional threat.
well, can you address what I just said? That's another thing.
Well, the security assurance is
Well, I didn't say security assurance. I just said economic coercion. I just said that the Trump administration violated it again, like 2 weeks ago.
well, that it matters. That it
Well, yeah, what I
matters
said
to
does
point.
matter. That's why I wanted a response to that. Look, I'll answer your other thing if you just
Well,
respond to this.
no. What I'm saying is the answer to your question matters on hinges on this point. And if you give me a second to actually answer, because every time I've tried to start, you've went over me. So if you go by this, and we are not obligated to send military assistance on number 4, then in 2014, when they invaded Ukraine and we started aid, we weren't obligated to send that aid by the memorandum. We are not obligated. So, us asking for something in turn for continued assistance is not economic coercion. Our other alternative is just to cut aid that's not obligated and let them fend for themselves. And that is not economic coercion. That is, if you want our continued support that's not obligated by the memorandum, we expect something in
It
return.
wasn't even continued support. It was, I think you don't, the deal
No,
was,
we sent
okay, uh-huh.
we sent them in 2014 billions of dollars,
Yeah,
and the drawdown authority kept
uh-huh.
going throughout until Trump stopped it.
So, sorry, I was gonna make a point on something else, and yet interested to say something I not related to what I was saying. Fuck, what was I saying before you interrupt me?
Mm, I'm not sure. You were saying something about number 3, about the economic coercion.
Thanks. What the fuck was I trying to say before you interrupted me? Oh, God damn it. Whatever. I'll just move off the point. It doesn't matter anymore. When we agreed to this, when we agreed to support Ukraine in the event that they get attacked,
By
let me
not
finish.
nuclear.
Jesus fuck, you just don't stop talking, do you?
You're the one. Hey, you've said more words than I have.
Have I?
But yes,
Okay.
you're recording, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm recording. It's live, man.
Yeah, that's my point. They can roll back the tape and see that you've interrupted me every time I
Okay,
started talking.
tell me when I'm allowed to talk.
Make your point.
When the United States signed the Budapest Memorandum, you're saying that it didn't come with any guarantees whatsoever of security assurances outside of we would go to the UN and complain about it. The problem is I don't find this to be believable. And the reason I don't find it to be believable is the Russians are on the Security Council. So the agreement would have to be we'll go to the Security Council where the Russians would violate and just immediately overrule any assurance, anything that the Security Council would do, because they would be the invading party after the Ukrainians gave all of their atomic arsenal to the Russians. There was an implicit assumption that if Ukraine was attacked in some capacity, that support would be sent. That was significant. Now, the question of what is significant and what isn't significant aid can be debated. We can debate whether those $2 billion was significant enough to fulfill the spirit of the agreement, because again, when they made it, it was snaky. It was not, here's the exact amount of support that will be sent by the UN. This is this amount of support that'll be sent. It was, we will help you so we will try to support you in some manner. We will give you security assurances. It was always kept vague to give them wiggle room. And so when I talk about things, when a nation makes a promise or commitment, I try to go by the spirit, not by, well, technically they could say they don't have to do anything, right? I prefer that because I think it's more honest. I think it makes more credibility in the United States, and I think it requires more honesty and credibility from our leadership. Now, when it comes to the second part about, well, technically it's not violating, asking for all of this aid in return for what we're going to send in the future. That's not economic coercion. It's not for aid sent in the future. Trump has said multiple times that this is for aid sent in the past. So this deal that Trump is asking of the Ukrainians is for no more aid. It is just to settle the debts that he created apparently with Ukraine out of thin air after the aid was previously sent and no debts were previously agreed to. So this is a debt being placed upon Ukraine literally out of thin air, while also territorial concessions are being demanded of them to the Russians in tandem with these economic exploitation. So for me, I think it's violating the spirit of the agreement in two directions.
My turn.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad you said that because what you said about the minerals deal, I had an issue with also. You're right. That first deal that they sent and got rejected would have met that criteria.
So at that point, that would have violated the agreement once that was
Would have,
proposed.
would have. They rejected it.
Well,
We
when
didn't
you say
force
would
it.
have, once you pressure someone, that is like if I say, give me all your money and then run away, I still tried to mug you. I'd still going to get arrested. Like I still attempted to violate the agreement at the very least.
Okay, the attempt, yes, they sent. It was attempted. They sent it. They rejected it. This is from Kiev Independent, right? That's no American motivation.
Yeah, I read them all the time. Uh-huh.
So you've read this document then,
Well,
where it
not this
goes on.
specific article, but I've read the Kiev Independent. Yes.
Well, this is the mineral deal
Yeah,
details.
I know they renegotiated the deal, but my
Yeah,
point is
this
that
is
the
the
American
renegotiate.
government tried to violate the deal by forcing this on Ukraine while they were between a greedy empire and now another greedy empire. And the Ukrainians, only by willing to say that they basically weren't willing to play ball at all, and walking away from the table and having that big blow up, only after all of that, only after the Ukrainians made them renegotiate the deal, then they renegotiated something else that was somewhat more reasonable. I would still say it's a violation to attempt, if the Russians attempt to invade, fail, and then run away, that's a violation of the deal. Just because it failed, it doesn't mean it's not a violation of the deal.
Well, no, but if it would have succeeded, yes. If economic coercion would have been we sent it, they sent it back and said no, and then we said, well, you're on your fucking own. That would have been
So then
because
what you're
we
saying
gave
is
them
the
another.
Russians did not economically coerce the Ukrainians by threatening the Ukrainian government with those trade cutoffs at the start of Euromaidan
No,
because they weren't implemented fully, or would that
I
count or
didn't
not
go
count as
that far
economic
back. I
coercion?
went from the '94 to the.
Okay, well
I
that
went
was in
from our side
2014. 2013
on the
technically,
Crimea,
before 2014, but right around then.
on the Crimea thing.
Well, no, that was Euromaidan. In 2013, how Euromaidan started was that Yanukovych said he was going to join this association agreement with the EU. Then the Russians said, if you do that, we're going to cut off all this aid into areas that primarily support you. Well, not aid, but like trade, which is going to hurt a lot of eastern Ukraine. So he pulled out of the agreement in the middle of the night, and then the rest of it's history because people started protesting, violent response, et cetera, et cetera. That was economic coercion, right?
Well, yeah, there's no. I'm not sitting here saying Russia didn't fucking.
Yeah, but my point is, if let's say Russia was like threatened that Yanukovych caved, is that economic coercion? Yes or no? Even if they didn't pull the trigger on it, I would say yes, because it's the threat. Coercion is the threat of force. No.
Yeah, did we
Yeah.
threaten? We didn't threaten Ukraine with force. We threatened to
We
withdraw aid that wasn't obligated.
we threatened to completely cut them off from previously committed support, and not only completely cut them off, but like we were backing up the Russian position on territorial demands. We're talking about territorial concessions on top of economic coercion.
Pointing out reality is not that, like, without
Pointing
the
out
U.S.
reality. We just had the White House press secretary say that the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant is on the border with Russia. This isn't pointing out reality. This is I don't even
I
know if that's purposeful.
I ain't even going off of look. Okay, my point here is the aid that we sent them in 2014 was not obligated. So us asking for something in return for that aid is not economic coercion.
Okay, so could Russia say that trade with Ukraine was not obligated? So us asking for you to not join the European Union shit in
Occurred is
exchange
occurred.
for, their trade is, they don't need to trade with them.
What? Say
Well,
that again.
why is Ukraine deserving of Russia's trade?
What do you mean Russia's
In
trade?
we just talked in 2013 when Russia economically coerced Ukraine, it was the threat of Russia's trade being cut off with Ukraine that coerced the government to pull out of the association agreement with the EU, which was a violation of the Budapest Memorandum because that's what Russia agreed not to do. It was the threat of
Oh,
the use of force
okay,
in order
but
to get
why are
concessions.
you bringing up? We're going off of this deal was not between the Russians. It was between America and
You're not.
Ukraine.
I'm trying to show that you don't apply the same standards because you said that that was economic coercion.
Because it's under different situations.
Okay, but what's the thing that makes it so different? What's the part of it?
Because of the fact that the aid we sent them, military aid in 2014, was not an obligation
Is Russian
from the
trade with
memorandum.
Ukraine an obligation? Do they have to trade with Ukraine?
No,
Okay, so is cutting off that aid economic coercion?
no. You have a right to
So
trade
if they were
with
to
who you
demand
want.
something in return for trade to continue, that would not be economic coercion?
And for trade, no,
So
that
then
would
they
be a
didn't engage in
trade
economic
tech.
coercion back in 2013.
Not if it was them trying to make a trade deal.
No,
Trade
make a
deals
trade
can be
deal. No, it
trade deals
wasn't
can be
making a trade deal.
negotiated.
They had trade, and then they blocked the trade. They were saying, look, we're going to block the trade on the border unless you pull out of this association agreement. You're going to lose all this income. People are going to lose jobs. People are going to lose this. People are going to lose that unless you don't economically intertwine with the Europeans, right? Now, there's nothing necessitating Russia to
Yeah,
have to trade
that
with them, but you know what they could do? They could just cut off trade. That they didn't. They wanted demands, concessions. They wanted, to use this economic pressure in order
to
to,
stop them from trading with someone else.
it's
Yes,
economic
that's
coercion.
coercion.
This type of economic coercion is not allowed in the Budapest Memorandum.
That's not the same thing that's happening here.
Okay, but you do agree that they're not allowed to do that in 2013 because you went back and forth that they are, they aren't, they are, they aren't, are they or are
Well,
they
I
not?
was talking about the memorandum and how we didn't break it.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is if you apply this standard in other scenarios, you would agree that it is coercion. We just don't want to use the word coercion here because then it would make us violate it.
Yes, but that was Russia trying to get a better deal for itself and stopping them from trading somebody else. This is us trading with Ukraine to give them a better position at the negotiation table. Those are two, you can't put them under the same scope because they're not the same thing. We're not doing this to make Ukraine
So we're
succeed to
making them give
Russia.
us their resources for negotiating. How does that help negotiating?
Because sitting there
How does that
across
get
the
us any
table
closer to
from,
peace?
if you would stop interrupting me,
Okay,
I would tell you.
tell me please.
Because Ukraine sitting to the table with Russia alone, if that ever happened, without our aid that is not obligated, they have a stronger position sitting there with America and NATO behind them at the table. Now, granted, what Trump is trying to do and exclude them from the conversations is bullshit. I agree with it. But the fact that without this aid they had in 2014, I don't think it would have took till 2022 for Putin to invade them. Because had we not, I'll put that this way. Okay, that's a whole nother thing. It's a war study here from where the fuck is it? It says who it's from. International Institute of Strategic Studies. I can send you this too. That pretty much is the Soviet legacy, assets versus liability. Talks about how Ukraine was the second largest Soviet army. 70% of Ukraine's companies depended on Russia for necessary parts. It talks about the military and everything.
Okay, I'm sorry. You didn't answer my question of how the minerals deal gets us any closer to peace. I understand how it makes America like have more minerals. Maybe we don't even know for sure. I understand how it would. I mean, it doesn't get us any closer to peace, though. It's not part of peacemaking. It's part of.
Well, I think one of the things
saving.
you said in Asmongold's video, I believe, was that made no mention of security guarantees.
Yes.
Number 10 here. It says the government of the United States supports Ukraine's effort to obtain security guarantees needing to establish lasting peace. Participants will seek to identify any necessary steps to protect mutual investments as defined by the fund agreement. I believe that because they had a conference before the Oval Office debacle, I'm pretty sure this is where they were going to talk about that. And strengthen economic security resilience and
what does any of that mean? Can you speak that to me in a way that isn't bureaucrat talk on how this makes Ukraine safer, what security guarantee exactly that is? Because that to me,
no.
I work with bureaucrats. I've worked with bureaucrats. I live in the DC area. I know how bureaucrats talk. To me, that's a whole lot of nothing. Oh, we support Ukraine in getting something to security guarantee themselves in some way. That's not that. What does that mean? That means nothing. It doesn't advance security guarantee. It doesn't say security guarantee. It just because it said the word security guarantee. If I'm like, hey, in your health report, there's no mention of like how we're gonna advance cancer research and cancer. It's like, yes, there is. If you look here, it says the word cancer over here once. It doesn't say anything about cancer. It just said, it's there. It says cancer bad. It doesn't advance anything.
Because in this right here, it says participants will seek to identify, which means in that meeting, I'm pretty sure, because it was the meeting before the Oval Office, right? They met there and they talked before. I'm assuming we didn't get to see it, but I'm pretty sure, or were they supposed to talk after lunch? Either way,
there was supposed to be some talks after lunch, and then they were shut down by the president.
Okay. All right. So they will seek to identify any necessary steps. So I'm assuming.
I think it was supposed to be press conference. Okay. I forget the order. It doesn't matter.
Either way, you know what I mean? I'm assuming that would have been brought up privately in that conversation. Assuming. But it makes that point.
Okay. So yes. This is the thing. I am not going to give any line or rope or help to Trump on like, oh, well, I'm sure in private Trump has figured out a security guarantee. I'm sure Trump's figured this out in private by now.
That wouldn't have been figured out. That's not what I'm saying. Now, what I'm saying is when Zelensky got to the White House, that lunch or whatever, that's when they would have decided that. They
didn't. If they would have decided it, we'd already know about it. We would have heard about it.
Yes, I understand that because he got kicked out
But
because
that was
of
but I think the press conference was after. I still think they've had meetings or they've had times to talk at other times. You're saying that they were about to get security guarantees done, but
no,
then when
I'm
Zelensky,
saying
no, let me finish. This one's beautiful to
alright,
me. To me, I just saw a beautiful painting fall down. So that that they were gonna talk about security guarantees, but then when Zelensky mentioned them in public, at that moment, all of the sudden, security guarantees fell away. Because when I remember from that meeting, and I remember from the aftermath of this talk of how the agreement, the for Marco Rubio and going on Fox, how the security agreement was the economic deal in and of itself. That by integrating Ukraine with America economically, that the Russians would be so scared of our economic interests being hurt that it would be its own deter. That's not a security guarantee. That is the masking of an economic deal for the United States as a security guarantee. So I just really.
yeah, but we don't know because it never got that far.
You know what? You got me. What can I do? Maybe Trump would have brought him to the super secret White House room and would have
Why
given
are
him
you
the
still
super
stuck
secret
on Trump?
file. Well, no, I am
See,
stuck on Trump because there is
no,
because you're
okay, alright.
treating Trump like
You're
he's a
not
normal human. You're treating
I
him like
haven't
he's got
even
2 legs, 2 arms, and he's got a brain up here. He doesn't when it comes to this. He
so
doesn't have
you
a
fall
plan.
under the same rhetoric. You're focusing on Trump and focusing on Trump's
Well, you just said that no.
inadequacies, and
We're
you're not listening.
focusing. We're focusing on Trump because Trump's the person who would have offered the security guarantee because he's the president of the United States. And when you say they would have discussed it and would have figured it out, I'm calling bullshit on Trump because Trump, his staff, and no one around him have offered a security guarantee for Ukraine. And he said 24 hours, so he's had plenty of time.
Ugh. I mean, what do you want me to say about it?
Well, what I'm saying is that they didn't talk about security guarantees. You brought this up. I don't know why you're lost for
Yeah,
words. You
that
brought
because
this
you're
up. You
not
got the Kiev
listening to
Independent
me.
article on screen.
You're listening to me. You're not listening to me. It says will seek to identify. I'm telling you that didn't happen because Zelensky got kicked out, and then you
Of the
go on.
press conference,
Right,
how would that have come up at the press conference if he brought it up in public? He brought it up in
the
public,
okay. Listen,
and that's what crashed
the,
it. He crashed it because he
the,
mentioned security guarantees.
listen.
Trump even said today that what happened in the Oval Office meeting was part of a strategy to continue to add the pressure on Ukraine.
Where did he say that?
Yeah, it was reported in Ukrasty Pravda, but I mean, I can show you the quote once I can send it to you. He's talking about how the pressure campaign on Ukraine can also be seen in the Oval Office meeting. That we got a glimpse of it in there of this effort to pressure Ukraine in line. And when we talk about pressuring Ukraine in line, to be clear, the only thing that Zelensky said in that meeting that caused that outrage was the security guarantees question. Was the question of Russia's violated this 25 times. What are we going to do this time? So that's why hard for me to believe that it would have been fine. Because he mentioned it, that they would have brought up security guarantees. He brought up security guarantees and he got lambasted for it. Here's Ukrainsky Pravda. I'll read it for the audience. 1 second. In addition, no, that's the curse thing. Here it is. Trump speaking to, Donald Trump has commented on the tense discussions that took place in the Oval Office during his meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky on February 28th. He also stated that the U.S. decision to halt arms supplies to Ukraine had no impact on the Ukrainian forces in the Russia's Kursk Oblast. We had to get Ukraine to do the right thing, and it was not an easy situation. You got to see a glimpse at the Oval Office, but I think they're doing the right thing now, and we're trying to get a peace agreement done. We want to get a ceasefire and then a peace agreement.
Where was this quoted from?
This from Trump.
No,
This is
like
you
where
can even
from?
hear Trump. You can even hear Trump in these words. You can hear his language. This is how he talks.
No, I can't just hear somebody. It's like show me the words coming out.
Okay, you need the words. How about C-SPAN? Is that good enough for you?
The hell C-SPAN?
What's C-SPAN? C-SPAN is the biggest non-profit broadcaster of American political coverage in the United States.
Okay. Well, see, when I bring up about what one of them said, I bring up something like this.
It will be just weak.
What are you?
Him saying it out of his mouth.
Okay, well, I
And I
just said
was
C-SPAN. What about? Do you not trust C-SPAN? Is C-SPAN not good enough for you?
I don't care about these. The only
Okay,
reason
no,
I
I'm
went
saying I
here
have video source from C-SPAN, from one of the
uh
most credible news providers in the United States that I'm honestly surprised you don't know about. But I mean, like,
well, I don't
I
really
have it on.
follow
Okay,
like media. I
that's
go
fine.
and look for myself.
I would highly recommend C-SPAN. It's probably one of the better podcasters out there.
And the
So
reason I've been using the Kiev independent articles is so nobody can say it's American,
yeah, do
you
you want
know.
me to share? I mean, should I share a screen so I can? I mean, I don't know if we're gonna play the whole C-SPAN thing. I don't know if it starts in the middle of his statement. But the source is C-SPAN, and I think that's reliable.
Okay. But that's why I've used Kiev independent. That way people can't say I'm using American leaning media.
That's fine. I like the Kiev Independent. I know some of their journalists, good people. Anyway, the full thing is 9 minutes. I'll send you a link, and you can check it afterwards
Mm.
if you don't believe me that he said this. But I I
Okay.
I think C-SPAN's a pretty reliable source.
But this is from the Munich conference, and I think this also fueled some of the
Munich conference.
heat. Yeah,
You're showing one of Zelensky's things again. Okay, one second.
yeah,
Yeah, because
because this is
because
what I mean.
this C-SPAN's quotes from yesterday. Let me come back to where you're at.
Well, like I was going to go in chronological order here. That's why I was trying to go through here.
Okay.
But I think this is somewhat what fueled the tension in the White House a little bit because this was on the 15th, I believe.
Okay.
But America will not offer guarantees unless Europe's own guarantees are strong. And I also will not take NATO membership for Ukraine off the table. But right now, the most influential member of NATO seems to be Putin, because his whims have the power to block NATO decisions. And that's despite the fact that it was Ukraine's army that stopped Russia, not a NATO country, not NATO troops, but only our people and our army. And there are no foreign armies fighting on Ukraine.
The comments of only Ukraine, not NATO, and the Putin influencing the White House already probably had Trump thinking
So wait,
a
wait,
bad way about
what's the things he said here that were bad?
that. If you're going to the White House asking for somebody to help you, which is what 10 days later after this, because this was on the 15th,
Okay,
I
no, but I'm
believe,
asking you what he said here that was bad.
that Putin is the biggest influencer of Trump or of NATO, and that only Ukraine has stopped the Russian advance. Only Ukraine's army has stopped Russia.
Uh, yeah, both of
It's
those
not
things are
true.
true.
No, they're not.
Okay, well, you want to start with the first one, then move on to the second one?
The first one is the influence on the White House or NATO's decisions is
Yeah,
Putin.
yeah, right. Putin definitely had. Well, hey, Iri, thanks for the raid. This stream is sponsored by C-SPAN, the #1 public broadcaster of news in the United States. What a time to be rated by the #1 C-SPAN streamer on Twitch. Okay, so I don't know what you want me to say. So your problem is
That
that what?
that the fact my problem is like you go on this
Because
and
like the
you
Russians are
found out. Hold
influencing their
on,
decision
hold on.
making. Like
You
Tulsi
go
Gabbard is their
here.
gal. She's the top intelligence official in the United States. Number one, I
Well,
don't think this is what he was saying, but you got Russia's top gal as the top intelligence official in the United States. You have Trump repeating Russian propaganda basically verbatim, like on a regular basis.
what do you mean you don't think that's what he was saying? It literally came out his mouth, and it's from
Well, then
Kiev
repeat it
Independent.
again. Say it again.
His whims have the power, seems.
Hold on.
But right now, the most influential member of NATO seems to be Putin.
Okay, what does
That's
that
why
have to do with Tulsi Gabbard? I'm saying I don't
didn't
think he
bring
was
up
talking
Tulsi
about.
Gabbard.
I was bringing up Tulsi Gabbard. Okay.
See, you're bringing up people that aren't even.
Okay, his point is Putin he is dividing and conquering NATO. He is affecting European capitals. He is for either whether it be Hungary or Slovakia and dividing their strategy. He's influencing them through their politics and the spreading of misinformation or disinformation and trying to create discontent by spreading Russophilic content. They're trying to do episodes of sabotage and otherwise. Certain nation states, out of fear of economic reprisals, is thinking about caving. And there's quite. I mean, they are. He is saying that they're influencing the decision making in a way that is getting them off the ball and containing Russian influence. He is not saying that Donald Trump is Putin. He's saying the most influential member of NATO is Putin, as in he is influencing all of these NATO states in these ways. Because NATO is largely based upon the idea of, combating, well, the threat to the east, so to speak.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and I know what he's saying. But the point is, you're about to go talk to the person that.
Okay, but you said it wasn't true. I don't care if we can talk about if it's diplomatic in a second. You said it was not true. So you get what I'm saying. Is it true or is it not true?
In light of recent events, yeah, I'd say it's true.
Okay, so can we do the second one before we move on to the diplomatic nature of it? What was the second one you said I was not true, I was lying about? Or, well, not lying, but not true about?
Ukraine on its own stopping Russia.
So I don't think, now Zelensky has said on many, many times he's thanked the West for its aid. He's thanked.
That's not my claim. Let
me finish my sentence, and then maybe you'll see a point at the end of it. He's thanked them at many, many different occasions. He's made it very clear that their assistance has helped them. But when I go over there, I don't see a lot of dead Frenchmen. I don't see a lot of dead Spaniards. There's some, and they're good people, the ones who decide to go over. But it's mostly young Ukrainian men and old Ukrainian men dying in those trenches. They're the ones bleeding for not really their own defense, but many Ukrainians see it as the defense of Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, all of NATO and Europe in a larger war that would bring much more youth from many other countries into it. And so when they think about the physical toll, the economic toll, the physical toll has entirely been borne by the brunt of the Ukrainians. The economic toll has 90 to 95% been brunt by the Ukrainians. The last 5% being most of that being the energy decrease at the start of the war and some inflationary pressures. So when he says something like this, he is indicating that we're the ones bleeding, we're the ones dying. And I think him making this point is fine. I can understand how somebody could read this wrong to say, oh, they're not thankful at all. But that's only if you don't listen to Ukraine every other time they speak, every other time Zelensky speaks and thanks them and says how helpful it's been. But it is them dying in the trenches. And I think they have a reason to say, we're the ones who died here. You ask the Finns, who held off the Russians? Do people say, oh, it was the Swedes because they sent aid? Well, no, it was the Finns. People say the Finns.
Yeah, I understand that. But my point is from outside looking in. That's what he's got.
Okay, but let's be clear. You said I was both wrong and it was bad diplomacy. I'm just talking about whether it was wrong first. Then we can move on.
Well, he is wrong. He is wrong about that second part, because if he had not received aid and money for equipment, he wouldn't be in that good of a position. And nobody's saying it's a good position, by the way. It's a shitty position everywhere around. But he wouldn't be in that good of a position on his own. So no.
Yeah, they'd be in a worse
And-
position. But when they talk about
and-
holy, wait.
Hold on. No, hold on. Well, see, you're not listening to
No,
listen.
it just
You're not
sounds
listening
sheltered.
to learn. It's not sheltered.
It sounds
you would-
sheltered.
Okay, it sounds sheltered. Your whole attitude through this, it shows me you're not actually listening to learn or to refute an argument. You've shouted over me several times. You're disregarding every piece of information I bring you.
Yeah,
You're
I'm a
not
real
looking at
cunt.
it from a. Well, I did I say that?
No, I did. Now, can you finish your point?
Are you actually going to listen to it?
I've been listening to it, even if you don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, where was I? Damn it. Oh, yeah. You don't get to sit there and say you've done something by yourself if somebody gave you the means to do something.
I
You
believe
didn't do it on yourself.
Ukraine has more than the right, because I think a lot of people forget exactly the toll that they're paying. And when they go out and they emphasize that toll, that they're the ones bleeding, they're the ones dying, I think it's important to emphasize this, in fact, because from the way I listen to it, when I listen to people talk about like peace in Ukraine, you'd make me think that Fox News is living on the front line. You'd make me think that a lot of these people sheltered, and this is what I was getting at, not saying that you specifically are like super sheltered, but that this, when he talks about this, he's talking about the toll that they will pay, that every day the war goes on, more Ukrainians are going to die. They will pay much more of the toll on a massive scale. And from the Ukrainian perspective, they've already made the sacrifice for European security through the giving up of their atomic weapons, that this wasn't supposed to happen in the first place. And yet here they are paying that toll. And I understand that if you were to take this in isolation and take out the entirety of all of what Zelensky has said in every other instance about how thankful he is about aid that has been provided and has helped them fight back, and he said that it's helped them fight back on many other occasions, then maybe you could interpret an idea that he's ungrateful. But you'd have to be dishonest to do that, because he said it on many other occasions, and to me it seems clear he's saying we're the ones bleeding, we're the ones dying, we're the ones who's going to have to walk through these graveyards for the rest of our lives, we're the ones who have butterfly mines in our backyards, we're the ones paying the price, we're the ones taking the brunt of the invasion for Europe. That's what he seems to be saying to me. And so I don't really think this had any impact on negotiations, especially since neither of these things really came up.
Well, you think that way, but did the administration he's going to see think that way? That's what matters.
Did they bring it up?
They bring up what, this?
Yeah.
Hey, I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years, the United States of America.
For reference here, I think he was being a dick here.
Uh-huh.
Notice what.
You need to be thankful.
Trump.
I remember the clip. I've seen this many times. You need
Yeah.
to be
Well,
thankful, right?
notice what. Well, I want you to say this because everybody says Trump and him jumped down his throat. No, Trump sits here quietly through this until Zelensky makes another comment.
America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin.
Oh, and look, it's from C-SPAN.
Invaded Ukraine and
Yep.
destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace,
They're everywhere.
and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America
Ironic.
a good country is America engaging in diplomacy.
I agree with you on that one.
Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, quiet all the way through this.
He occupied it, our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea.
He's listening contently here.
Occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless.
Not jumping down his throat.
Will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact line?
2015.
2014.
He wanted to reiterate there that It was under Obama, not him.
2014 and 2015.
2014. Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
That's exactly
but-
right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed with him with gas contract. Gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong-
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
The thing about litigating in front of the media, if this
That's
was true
funny
and they
for
were
him. That's
going,
funny as well.
okay, now
Them
I
them
understand.
complaining about litigating
the-
something in front of the
all right.
media. They even
Yeah,
said
but
later
think
this is
about
gonna make good TV. And by the way,
think about
why
that.
would you pause it there? Well, because my comment about them jumping down their throat, you
I'm-
paused it
I'm
before they
getting
jumped
there.
down his throat. Because
I'm getting there.
Okay,
I'm if
you
you
played
chill
a
a
lot.
minute, if you chill, I'll explain why. There's
Yeah,
a
I didn't
reason
know
I
I was
wanted.
here for a feature flick.
I
Can we
mean,
play
this
Angels in
mattered.
the Enfield after this?
Well, see, this right here tells me you're not serious about learning because that
Because I
matters.
said a joke.
Because you're joking and you're not listening.
I am listening. I listened to the whole thing, and then I was like, okay, but that when I
Okay,
said jump down the
alright,
throat, I
no,
didn't
well-
reference you because okay, this is my problem. Okay, you the whole
Well-
time you were sitting there quietly, probably content, and then every few seconds, say, oh look, they're not jumping down their throat. Oh look, they're not jumping down their throat. Well,
Because I
that's what I
stopped it
wait.
to
Let me
make-
finish.
I
Jesus
sto-
Christ!
no,
I just
I
let you play
stopped
your
it.
clip.
I stopped it to make
Why-
a point.
Why did you emphasize it then? Why did you emphasize they weren't jumping down their throat?
Because
My
I
point
was
about the
gonna
jumping down their
read-
throat is later when he starts to speak and he's trying to translate everything he's thinking into Ukrainian and he has to translate what
Look.
they're thinking in English and Ukrainian in his head. He's having the problem getting the words out and they steamroll him later in the conversation. But you're
Okay,
emphasizing
listen.
before it starts, oh, look, he's not jumping. Yeah, and that 1.5
Because
minute
I haven't
clip.
got there. Because it's not 1.5 minutes. It's actually 35.
No, I
if
said
you
that
would've
section
given
you
me
just showed me was like 1.5 minutes.
Yes, because I stopped at that litigate point for a reason. You didn't give me a chance to finish my point.
Well, then don't make your point or don't make the other point until you get to it then.
Because this matters.
Well, then don't make the other point until you get to it.
When he stopped with that litigating point, he meant what I can only think if it was after lunch was this. They were going to talk about that after the lunch. So him litigating it in the middle of this press conference would have mattered.
So
That would have mattered.
I honestly don't believe it does. And the reason I don't believe it does because I don't believe the Trump administration wants to offer Ukraine any security guarantee
Okay,
whatsoever at
so-
any point. Let me finish.
you're
Well,
not-
well, fine, never mind.
Well, you're not basing that off of fact. You're basing that off of your feelings
Well,
about the
maybe I
Trump
had a thing I
administration.
was gonna say, but I don't wanna.
But anyway, my point here with this was if that was supposed to happen after this, then him bringing that up in the middle of this is disrespectful.
If you're a pussy.
You guys are going around.
No, see, you don't get
No, it is but no, I mean, okay. Let me just be blunt. Right?
Okay.
Trump just got Russia to agree to a ceasefire, right?
no.
I thought they got them to agree to an energy long-range ceasefire today.
And then Putin fucking shot off a bunch of fucking missiles.
Yes. What was it that Zelensky said during this? That was the most significant point. The only point of import when he was talking about all of this, do you think?
That Russia breaks deals. Nobody's
25
disputing that.
times was the number he used. 25 times Russia had agreed to a ceasefire and then violated it. Russia's ceasefire didn't last 2 hours. And so when he's bringing up that exact point here, then he says, Trump, look, I got to bring this up, because maybe they've had this conversation a million times in private. And now he's like, look, I don't know where else to bring this up. And so he brings it up here because your theory is equal as my theory. So we're all just speculating now. And so he's here trying to get like Trump to listen to, like, look, they're going to break the agreement again. Then it all falls apart. Trump goes forward with it anyway, gets the ceasefire, immediately falls apart. What Zelensky said was right. And so do you think this would have gone differently, significantly, or what ceasefire could have been offered that has been indicated by the White House at all outside of the economic deal? Has there been any signs outside of, well, something could have been said at a meeting? And they've reapproved the aid too. So I would imagine they would have reproposed the same deal after resuming aid function to Ukraine. They got them to agree to a 30-day ceasefire. That's much more than the Russians did.
No, my point here was, we didn't break the memorandum. They hold, Zelensky holds some blame for this going south. And that,
but the blame he holds is because he brought it up in a public setting.
Right.
So you think, okay, can we agree? I think this is something we could probably find common ground on. This doesn't have to be like a debate, bro, or whatever. When I said that if you're a pussy, this is a problem. That's what what I mean is the president of the United States, surrounded by the entirety of his cabinet and the vice president, should be able to stand up to a foreign leader that is reliant on their nation for their survival and say, this is a security guarantee, or this is how we know the Russians will stay. Look, Trump could have just said, you know why the Russians will follow this time? Because if they don't, we're going to punish them. You know, he could have just said something strong. Instead, they act like children and whine and tell him to bark like a dog and to say thank you because he didn't say thank you enough, even though he even said thank you at the start of this meeting. They just don't remember it because they weren't paying attention. When we say Zelensky did bad here, for me, what we're asking Zelensky to do is a balancing act where he's able to convince the president of the United States, who's media focused and brand focused, entirely in private, to care about Ukrainian interests. And I just don't see that as a winning strategy.
I can agree there. As far as, but my agreement here would have been the minerals deal would have been put the American interest in it, not Ukraine's interest. And for the record, and whatever, I've told my wife here several times, like, okay, Zelensky's signed the deal in Saudi Arabia, and from the way Trump's handled it from there, I've critiqued every step of the way. My argument was here that Zelensky holds some blame for this meeting going south.
You know, this whole let's say that I was to concede that Zelensky could have found a way to maybe phrase this nicer in public, or maybe he should have relied on a translator in this meeting instead of trying to speak in English, which might have been a smart move. But then again, I feel the problem is you have people in there asking him like, "Why'd you wear a suit?" They're trying to pick a fight.
Yeah,
there's people in there trying to pick a fight. And so let's say he did these moves where it's like, okay, Zelensky, wear a suit. You want to know what's going to be on TV the next day? Zelensky wears $10,000 suit as frontline babushkas blow to smithereens. That's exactly what it's going to be. You know what's going to happen if he gets a translator to make himself more clear and to add some niceties to, make sure that it gets across diplomatic like? He could speak English. Did he not respect the president enough to speak to him directly? Like, my problem is, like, we're asking him to tightrope walk over a ring, like rings and rings of fire. And yeah, maybe he might slip here once or twice, but at one point do we say the problem is the big baby in the room, not the person who has to please the big baby in the room?
Well, I said all three of them acted like assholes here, but
how did Zelensky act like an asshole? Because I think everything he said here was reasonable complaints. The only problem that's been voiced, I mean, seemingly, you can clarify if I'm wrong, because I'm not trying to run away here, is that he did it in public, which I don't think is an asshole move, because I think this is something that the public should know about. This is the future of 44 million people's security if they can return to their homes.
Yeah, I
God willing.
understand that. Like I said, I'm not arguing this to take away from the Ukrainian suffering. I fucking think it's ridiculous. I think Putin's a fucking asshole, but unfortunately, Putin is the asshole with the bigger stick.
But how is Zelensky an asshole here as well? I just don't see the
Well,
assholedom from
okay.
Zelensky here. I think the closest I can imagine is at one point, and this wasn't picked up too much by the media, I'm pretty sure Zelensky cussed under his breath when he heard something particularly stupid, but I don't think anybody picked up on it. So that'd be the one thing
Well-
I'm like, hey, dude, you back it up, back it up.
Okay, well, I think this was the start of it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close that because we've seen that, and then now we're gonna jump into the other part.
Around
This here.
and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower.
This is the reason why I said Vance is a fucking dick here. Zelensky kept pushing the security guarantees in public, which I think he was wrong for. If by that deal they were going to discuss it later, and you notice Trump
Be thanking
is still silent
to
here.
bring it into this
Have you ever
conflict.
been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been.
Trump doesn't lose it until
I've actually
Zelensky says
the
this.
stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President.
Okay, I'm gonna skip through this dumb motherfucker because
Propaganda tour.
Your military.
yeah,
A lot of questions.
I wish I got
Let's
the
start
reason.
from
I
the
wish I
beginning.
got a
Sure.
propaganda
First
tour
of
every
all,
once in a
you
while. They're
and
just
your-
like, Dylan, good luck.
everybody has
Don't
a
get killed.
yeah. How about it? Hey, when you do go over there, be safe, brother.
Appreciate
But
it.
Even you, but you have
this here, this is when Trump loses
you
it.
will feel it in the future. God bless.
you don't know that.
God bless. God bless.
The ocean comment is when Trump loses it, and you can see, like I said, he's under a lot of pressure. I get that, and he doesn't know English that well. But what was it exactly? You have a beautiful ocean, and you don't feel now, but you'll feel in the future. Knowing Trump's attitude towards that, do you not think he took that as an idle threat?
I mean,
Like,
if you're,
regardless.
it's not I mean, when you say an idle threat, it's not it's a warning, not a threat. When we say threat, that means like Ukraine's gonna land like Azov in Florida. No, that would like, oh, something might come over the ocean. The warning here is that, hey, if we get rolled over and Europe gets screwed up, you don't know what can happen across the Atlantic Ocean. You know, the future is malleable. It's not that's the implication I took from this, not Ukraine's gonna like nuke them or something.
Yeah, I know, but it's more so. I'm saying you can see how this man would have took that.
I could see how I could see how he could interpret it that way. I could also see how he could interpret it as somebody else interpreted it that way. Like, oh shit, if I don't say something here, I might look weak or something. I could see a few ways how he could
So,
encourage himself to comment. Yeah.
so I think that statement there is what got him kicked out of the White House.
Okay, but let's
Because
be
they goes-
clear. Because you said he was being an asshole, and do we agree there's a difference between not making the best diplomatic decision and doing something morally wrong? Because I don't think it's morally wrong to make an accurate warning to the United States that the oceans won't protect you from everything and you can't just close yourself off from the world, as we're kind of in a little bit of a kind of lopsided isolationist fervor, depending on if you're Israel or Ukraine. So I think that, I mean, it's not an asshole thing to do. I would say that I don't know if that public setting was the place to make that warning. I think maybe a private warning of that sort would have probably been more diplomatic towards Trump. But I don't think it's asshole-ish. I think it's accurate.
Well, I think it was. Well, when I said I didn't mean him being. I think he was being an asshole. That comment and what he said in the conference was disrespectful, and then
I'll
That
agree that this specific comment made at this specific moment could have probably, my problem isn't with the comment, my problem is the location of the comment. This is something that should have been said in the private meeting, this spear specifically.
Right.
Because this would be the president of Ukraine issuing a dire warning to the president of the United States behind closed doors, where I don't really see the use in signaling this to the public. As I do see the use of signaling, hey, Russia violates ceasefires. Because here's the thing. People might not appreciate how... Oh, 1 second, donation.
Trasamancer has donated $5.
Yeah, you're good.
If Trump took that as a threat, it's because he's acting like an HR department when they're being disingenuous to try to write up an employee.
Oh, God, I forgot what I was saying. Thank you for the $5, though. The donations always throw me off. It's honestly, I always appreciate donations, but man, I'm really bad at staying focused after them.
Yeah, you're good. I'm just saying from that point of view, if he knew beforehand, they knew the.
Sorry, I remembered what it was. Sorry, I agree that this one could have been set up front, but that other meeting we talked about, I honestly, the other one you showed me, the YouTube short, I think it's a stretch. I think it's a stretch because I feel like. Yeah, the Munich conference. I think it's a stretch. I think that Ukraine was trying to make the case to Munich about how much they had sacrificed to make clear that, like, look, we've put everything we can put on the line. Now it's kind of up to you to, step up, so to speak. I don't think it was a point of nobody has necessarily ever done anything to help us. And so if this is... I could see somebody clipping this, shipping this to him in isolation to be deceptive about it. And I could see a clip ship maybe influencing the president because it's not like he hasn't been clip chimp before or fooled by clip chimp.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Vance was at the Munich conference, so he would have heard that directly.
Yeah, I could see Vance trying to use this and twist it in this. I could see that. But I still think it would be dishonest. I don't think Vance is dumb enough to not know what Zelensky was saying, especially since Zelensky. Honestly, I don't remember the whole Munich security speech. Did you watch the whole thing?
No, I just.
Do you know if he thanked them at the start or anything?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Actually, in the 4 minutes thank you, there's him thanking. One of the cuts in that is him at the Munich conference. But what I was saying was, as far as from
so to be clear, Vance would have to deliberately ignore that part of the speech and clip chimp this in order to turn the president against Zelensky if he was to deliver that message, right?
I think more so it was Vance just ignoring the fact that he said thank you because of we did this alone. So he's stuck with that part, and he was already pissed off about it. And then when Zelensky brings up the security guarantee... Is that a distinction
without a difference, with the only real difference being that he didn't see it in your version?
Didn't see it. No. I'm saying he didn't see it. Vance would have been probably, in the audience of the Munich conference.
Yeah, so it would have heard the thank you as well, right?
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's where I'm saying Vance was a fucking dick that whole Oval Office meeting.
Okay.
But I've said that. That's not my point. My point was Zelensky holds some weight in that.
Okay. Is there any... I think we've kind of beat these points so far to death. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up before we wrap this up?
Well, yeah, there's several things, how I think them not giving up their nukes would have been better. NATO's involvement, because of the NATO expenditures. Europe wants to say we don't do enough.
What about the nukes? What does this have to do with my thing?
Oh, because there's I think it was you said they'd be better off if they didn't give up the nukes. I disagree with that one.
Did I say that?
In the Asmongold video, I believe so.
Did I say that Ukrainians believe that they should have kept the nukes, or strategically?
You said that. You said you think it would have been better for them.
So my position, as far as I know, as long as it has been, now I don't remember every second of the Asmon video. It was an hour, 40-minute video. But my position has always been that the Ukrainians would probably be safer if they had the nukes, but the affordability of the nukes was not feasible at the time due to the more than 10,000% inflation rate that Ukraine had, and the fact that the United States was willing to leverage food aid, literally starve out the population of Ukraine in order to get the nuke away from them. And there's also real practical security concerns about, Ukrainian generals in a collapsed economic state taking, payments in the back pocket in order to move stuff around. And so the decision was made by the Clinton administration that the best move was to, take all the nukes and move them over to Russia. Now, I do
Yeah,
believe that we should have put more security guarantees in place for Ukraine, but I don't think that like preserving the nukes was really feasible. But when I talk to Ukrainians, like they all would be seemingly willing to do it from how I talk to them, but honestly, like I don't know if it really ever was economically feasible.
no, it wasn't, and it wasn't militarily feasible because I brought up different things here to show that as well. But we ain't got to go through every one of those if you don't want to. It was pretty much just telling them about the '90s. Where is it? I think it was. This was his YouTube video from Kiev talking about it. Um,
It would have been
here's
it would have been in a very expensive. They would have to made it so they could redirect the command center back to Kiev because currently it was in Moscow. I mean, it
yeah,
was in
and they got
Moscow, and then
70
it would cost a lot.
percent of
Yes.
parts. They got 70% of parts from the motherland or the Russia, the or what it was, USSR or some shit or whatever they were. Because this at this point in time they were Ukraine SSR or some shit. But they had 70% from there. And do you think that Russia would have let them, if they kept the nukes, let them have the modernization they would have had needed to actually fight them? I think the attack would have came sooner, and they wouldn't have had NATO's help and no U.S. intelligence.
Maybe,
That
but I
was
don't
my
know
point.
because like Boris Yeltsin, tried to invade Chechnya. How did that go? Like I don't really know how an invasion of Ukraine in that year would have
Yeah.
went. I mean, all the provinces of Ukraine voted to leave the USSR. So if Boris Yeltsin then invaded,
This is
I
what
mean,
I'm
Ukraine
saying.
would have had a ton of issues because its military was, well, in the state that it was at the time. But I mean, the Russian military really wasn't all that much better. That's how they got chewed up in Chechnya. I mean, obviously, the Ukrainian military would have been in a worse state,
Yeah.
but my
Well, I
point
mean,
is I
there's
have
a
no
lot
clue
of
what would have happened. It's like this is the problem with alternative history scenarios. It is true that a
Mm.
Russian invasion becomes much more likely, but then somebody could say from the Ukrainian perspective, okay, so you fast forward what we had to deal with anyway by 20 years.
Yeah, I think you're better off in the
And
20
then
years of preparing.
Ukraine also has atomic material put who knows where that they could use as leverage. Like, okay, fine, you don't want to work with that, that's fine. Let's see where this nuke goes. And I mean
Yeah,
that's cruel. I mean that's not the nicest way of doing diplomacy, but I mean when your nation's survival is at stake.
I understand that, but okay, so you don't have NATO, you didn't go through the modernization, you have the nukes, you don't have the economic ability to sustain those nukes, and you're going out against an opponent that gives zero fucks about his people. So, okay,
Wait,
you're gonna send nukes.
what happened with Chechnya though?
I'm not
Chechnya is
sure. I
like
didn't study
1/20th
Chattanooga.
of the size of Russia. Boris Yeltsin, same presidency around the same time period this happened,
Mm.
invaded Chechnya. They lost and left.
Was that 90, 91?
Yeah,
Because this is talking
around that
about
time
in the
period. It was
90s.
later in 1999 when Putin, took over that they invaded again and they had more success. My point is that I just like it is true that we could have had even maybe a worse outcome under that scenario. Maybe it would have been different.
Oh,
But I really don't know. It's impossible to say looking back because the history would have changed so significantly.
well, let me ask you this. Then 2014, the Crimea. How did it fare with the Russians there in 2014?
It was 95, by the way. Sorry, continue.
What?
I said it was 95. You said 91 or 92. Somebody in chat reminded me that the Chechen invasion was 95.
Oh, okay. I was going off of the memorandum number, and this. Oh no, I said this. This article is talking about 91 Ukraine. That's what I meant.
Oh.
Sorry, but so 2014 Crimea happens, and that was with the money they got from deconstructing the nukes and the money for their economic growth. So yeah, fast forward that back, they don't give up the nukes. They didn't get millions of dollars to pour into their economy. So their economy is highly reliant on Russia because 70%. I believe that Zapornoy base. What was the name of it before that? That it had a different name. I can't remember exactly, but that was built by with the Russian assets or the Soviet Union assets.
What base did you say?
The power plant was all the industrialization was from the Soviet Union's putting them in Ukraine.
Okay, what about that?
So the Soviet Union at that time, everything was central or controlled by the government. So they declared independence. They were highly reliant on Russia for their parts and everything. And so you don't get NATO help, you don't get funding for your economy, and you keep the nukes. That would invite a Russian invasion more, and you do not have the ability to deter that because, yeah, you can nuke Russia. Putin gives no fucks for his people,
Yeah, but
obviously.
okay, but the problem is like
Okay,
what we're talking about. Putin
okay,
wasn't in power; it was Yeltsin, and Yeltsin did give at least enough of a fuck to pull out of Chechnya because it was a disaster. So
right.
it would
Well,
have
we're
been a
talking about
completely
time
but
here.
I thought we were talking about if they had their nukes, right? Are we now fast forwarding all the way to 2014 if they still had nukes?
No, no. We're going from nukes to 94 and everything, where Russia modernization started happening. So as Russia poured,
In
they poured
94?
more money. Yeah, Russia's. Hold on.
Okay, to be clear, 1 year after what you're talking about is when the Russians invaded Chechnya and were torn up. So I don't know if that's a particularly good year for the glory of the Russian armed forces. Which makes sense because it was
That's a
just post collapse of the Soviet Union. You would be in a dilapidated state.
yeah.
Look, I'm not even saying
And
it was the best move to keep the nukes given the circumstances because of their economic position. My only point is we can't really know how different it would have been because there's so many different, like Yeltsin is a totally different
exactly.
leader, totally different leader of Ukraine, totally different moment with the collapse of the Soviet
Did
Union.
Chech
Because,
have
for
any
example,
outside help?
I think in 1994, the United States might actually be much more assertive in trying to bring something about to end it quickly and find a different agreement showing, oh shit, I guess they are going to keep fighting, so we have to have a real security assignment here. There's so many different factors. It's impossible for me to analyze it. But what I can say is yes, that there was problems with just keeping the nukes. It's not that simple, and I think people dumb it down.
Also, did Czech have help in it in anywhere economically, militarily?
Hmm?
Did the Chechens have help
Oh
in
no,
that?
we didn't give shit to the Chechens. Really, we were kind of scared because of their well, there was a
Well,
lot of
I'm not
Islamists
just
tied to,
talking
but
about
we
us.
okay.
Like,
I think there were like other Islamists. I know Islamists came to Chechnya and they fought, but they did not because of where Chechnya is located. It's very difficult to get them aid. They're like in the Caucasus in an area where you would have to like good luck. I mean, it's not impossible. People did smuggle aid to the Chechens, but it was not a significant amount. They didn't get no air power. They didn't have any like big tanks unless they captured it from the enemy. Um,
mhm.
most of it was stuff that they captured from the Russian armed forces or from like local stockpiles and such, or
So
like
you
simple
agree
small
with
arms that
me?
was
Keeping
smuggled.
the nukes would have been a bad idea for them.
It's impossible for me to say now, but I say that it's not the magic cure that people talk about it as.
Right. All right. And the last point was pretty much just Europe's people saying Europe does more for NATO and everything than we do.
I said Europe does more for NATO than the United States? Or did I say
A lot
Europe
of
contributes more to Ukraine than the United States?
Well, I weren't saying you on that one. I was saying most people that argue that. say.
Okay,
I
well,
think what it was. Hold on.
I'm me.
Let me see what. Da, 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 da,
I'm
I
me
know.
though. Is there how much more can we do your last big point, because I can't do this all night, and I do think that my editor wants to go to bed.
That's fine. The last thing was about the NATO expenditures. So
Okay,
everybody says that we don't contribute enough, or yeah,
who says
we
that?
don't contribute. Dude, check your comments.
Okay, can we okay, I don't can you give me anybody of importance, like any like person with a name that is recognizable, that says that United States is not contributing enough financially to NATO?
Anybody with
Just
importance?
like a name that anyone would recognize, or I would recognize, like a name, like a politician or a diplomat, or hell, even a big businessman, you know?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. Because the way I've always heard the conversation is the United States contributes the lion's share into NATO, and then the other NATO states contribute a smaller amount. Now, if you
Oh,
were to account for purchasing power, that distance actually closes a significant portion, but not enough to close the gap. And so, yeah, the United States is still, more than a net
here it is.
contributor to NATO.
You said the in the Asmongold video. You said the Europe doesn't need to rely on U.S. so heavily like it does.
That Europe doesn't have to rely on the United States like it. Okay, that's different
Mhm.
than the United States is not the net. That's a very different comment, isn't it?
Yeah,
Okay, so that's a totally different comment.
yeah, I
Um,
misread that.
so I'm trying to remember what I was talking about, but vaguely, if I was to take a swing at what I probably meant, uh, I think that Europe, right now, could 100% make decisions that could allow it to depend upon itself for its defense. It would be very difficult. It would be very hard. It would lead to not only more societal cost for its people, but would probably also lead to possibly even more wars with Moldova and Georgia and other areas where the Russians could continue to go into, other states where it feels like the Euro-Atlantic rift has been divided. Now it's time to go on the advance. But I think they have the economic capacity. I think that they have the workforce if they were to do it in a coordinated fashion. And I'm seeing certain decisions about bulk purchases in joint, meaning nation states are buying bulk of artillery together. Nation states are making are lifting their debt ceilings, like Germany just voted to make it so that the debt ceiling cannot be affected on either aid to illegally attacked states, an obvious reference to Ukraine, or infrastructure and defense spending. And so the hope is that now that the Trump administration has shown itself to not be that dedicated to European defense, and I saw this on the campaign trail, I warned about it on the campaign trail. It's not like it came out of nowhere. They had more time to get more prepared. That's why there was all this discussion of Trump proofing Ukraine aid. They still have a ways to go. But I think that if they were to put their pedal to the metal and they were to make the real tough decisions necessary for national defense, that an alliance of 1 billion people minus the United States could stand up to a nation of 160 million that has a demographic issue. Now, Europe has a lot of demographic issues too, but still, 500 billion, 600 billion is much larger than 40 million. I
But
said
yeah,
billion, sorry,
we've
billion.
been telling Europe to do this for 10 years,
Okay.
and 2014, 3 countries in NATO. 2024, 23. Why is it taking 10 years for that to happen?
Because the Russians invaded and the peace dividend promise has been smashed.
I don't know, buddy.
What do you
Feel
mean? I
like
don't. Wait,
they
what do you
coulda-
think it was? If it wasn't the largest war in Europe since World War II, I think was the primary motivator. What do you think it was? If it wasn't that,
that's my point. Like they should have. It shouldn't have taken till 10 years for 23 countries to hit there. This 2015 should have definitely been a spike higher than that.
Yeah.
And the thing about we paying 2/3,
But what does
2014,
any of this have to do with my point that they could?
it's the point that it should have been happening a long
But
time
that's
ago.
a totally separate point than what I've said that for a long time. I believe that the Europeans should have been spending more aid and sending offensive military aid to Ukraine since 2014. I mean, if your question to me is, Dylan, do you think we should have been more aggressive on aid to Ukraine before 2022, the Europeans and the Americans? My answer would be absolutely.
No,
But my
my
comment
point
that you
is,
pointed to was the idea of Europe dealing with its own defense on its own, and I do think that is feasible and possible. That was my comment, and I think it was
well,
part of a larger point to say that the United States will lose political. I mean, I can't remember exactly what I said because you misquoted back to me what I even said at first, but I would think it'd probably have to do with a larger point of saying that if we don't take European security priorities into consideration, then they'll just rely on their own self for security priorities, and they won't care about ours. And so when we have a confrontation with the Chinese, maybe they'll be thinking a little differently.
and my point is, this number being 3 here should have already been higher.
Yeah, I agree.
And that wouldn't happen. That Crimea probably wouldn't even happened if this was higher.
Okay,
That's my point.
I agree with you.
A lot of your viewers don't.
A lot of my viewers think that if Europe was spending like 2 to 3% of their GDP on defense spending and more dedicated to Ukraine's defense, that couldn't have had an impact in 2014.
No, a lot of your viewers sit there and think that they give enough already. That they
Well,
shouldn't
this is a
have
wait. This is a
had to.
totally separate. Okay, I'm sorry. Well, back in 2014, we're at this number, but this is the problem you're running into. They're angry because right now Trump keeps lying about it. He keeps saying that we've sent $350 billion. He used to say it was 300 billion. He added another 50 billion out of thin air, which is more than 3 times the actual number that has been sent to Ukraine from the United States. And then while using that fake number, he says that we've sent a significant portion more than the Europeans, who have sent more than us. And so when people talk about like, oh, the European, they have sent more to us to Ukraine. What do you mean?
All right. Well, I say European. That's another point of contention I have. It's this number here that says Europe, NATO, and Canada, United States. That's my problem here. You're telling me what? We're up to 32 now? 32 countries, or 31 or 32 countries only
Okay.
sent 430 billion, and we sent 755 billion of NATO's budget.
Okay, I thought we were talking about aid to Ukraine for a second, but if we're talking about the budget, then yes, the majority of the budget is still not other NATO states. It's becoming a larger and larger portion. If you compare for purchasing power, it's gotten a lot closer, which I do think is important, because if a dollar gets you 2 shells over there, but 1 shell over here, I think that should be accounted for when we talk about what they're contributing to the NATO alliance. That's why a dollar goes a lot further in Ukraine in defending Europe than a dollar goes in the United States. But again, my point was about today. If these European powers decided to make these investments, like we've heard recently, for example, with the German decision to remove defense spending from the debt brake, these types of decisions, if they were to uncap their resources and actually apply themselves, that they could stand up against the Russians. And then once they've done that, that's going to lessen America's leverage significantly. And so I don't know how any of this has to do with my point about today, not 2014 or what they should. Like, my point is about today.
This is 2024. Yeah, this is from 2014 to 20. There's a 10-year period. Yes, because we've kept on them. They have. You see, it is getting closer. But my point of contention is we always get compared to Europe. If you go country by country, no country has given more than us. It takes a whole coalition to match what
Well,
we
yes,
have.
because they don't. No other country in NATO has our population, so of course, then any individual nation. What do you think? Germany is going to send more than we are? You think? Do you think the Swedes, Denmark? Who? Of course, that's like asking fucking Texas to spend more than the United States. And as a
Well,
whole, it
that's my
doesn't make
point.
any sense.
Then
So that's why
Texas
we
goes,
judge Europe as
"Hey,
a
we
block of
don't give
states.
enough."
That's why we judge them as a coalition.
I understand that, but when Texas looks at us and tells us we're not doing enough, that's a problem.
I think so you think that until Germany spends as much as the United States on aid to Ukraine and on military spending, they cannot say that the United States should contribute more to Ukraine's defense, which is what they're complaining about, not
Yeah.
NATO spending.
Well, where do you think most of where do you think
Answer that
Ukraine's
question.
defense comes
Answer that question, because you know that's a ridiculous standard. There's no way.
No.
You know, well, let me put it this way. Germany's budget for last year was $480 billion. They would need to spend $850 billion every year in order to hit these numbers. And so of our military spending. So this
Then
isn't
don't
a practical.
talk to us about what we sent.
Okay, then don't expect Europe to ever die in a cave again if another plane hits another tower. Don't expect Europe to come to our aid if we ever experience any problem. Because again, if this is the case, then Germany and all these states should have not gone to Afghanistan. We should have gone alone, and we just had our own boys die in those caves after 9/11. Because at the end of the day, until Germany spends $850 billion, double their military budget, they don't really deserve our help or telling us to, this is bullshit. Of course, we have to judge them as a coalition.
They didn't deserve our help.
We have to judge them as a coalition. We should be lectured because we're lying. We're lying constantly. We're lying about the aid we sent. We're lying about the conditions of the war. We're lying about how many people died. We lie about this war through the side of our mouth and every breath we take. And so they're angry, not only that we're lying about how much we've sent, but then they were saying we've sent more than the Europeans, when that's a lie. The Europeans have sent more to Ukraine. They have never said that they spend more on NATO than us. Or that. Their main complaint has always been, when it comes to the issue of Ukraine, they're ahead of the path while we're claiming we're ahead of them. That's the complaint. That's the main issue people have. I don't think there's anybody in the world who ever claimed, Germany spending more on NATO, all of Europe spending more on NATO than the on their spending.
No, but there's people in the world that say Germany contributed more to Ukraine, and that's a lie.
I mean, as an individual nation, that's not true. And I don't know who these people of the world are, but I mean, I don't spend my time fighting with people in comment sections. I try to listen to the people who are, important and not neats. And I'm not trying to say that they're all neats, but I'm just saying that's what somebody in the YouTube comment section said, but it's not what the leader said. I don't think there's any popular conception of, because I've never seen anybody say that Germany sent more to Ukraine than the United States. And I cover this war all the time. I see people say Europe has, because it's true, but I haven't seen Germany or France or Spain talked about in that capacity. That's why people are panicking so much about the cutoff of American aid.
The cutoff of American intelligence mainly. Yeah, which is what NATO relies on heavily.
What?
NATO relies on American intelligence heavily.
Yeah.
And that's just because of the sheer amount of satellites we have.
Yeah, we share a lot of intelligence through Five Eyes and such. A lot of apples. Thanks for the tier 1.
But that's pretty much it. It's just mainly the basis on people sitting there saying, we don't give enough.
Yeah, we don't, but I mean,
I think we do.
I don't think we do. I think you deal with a problem when it's easiest to deal with. You don't wait for it to become bigger and rot the foundation, so you have to take out all the floorboards, and it's going to be 3 or 4 times as expensive as it would have been otherwise. And that's what I think we're kind of doing.
I do agree with that point, but I think that's more so on the Europe side
I think it's
because
on both of us. I think it's both of our fault.
so
I mean, like, at least the
that's pretty
Germans
much.
aren't saying we've sent triple the amount of aid we've actually sent. The best aid on earth, the bestest.
Yeah, well, I just don't go by what people just say as far as like their numbers and everything. I think in the top of this with the NATO expenditure, it literally says these won't it won't reflect media published or whatever because it's like what they actually get, not what people claim.
Mm-hmm.
But
So is that everything?
that's yeah, it's pretty much those contentions that NATO Europe needs to contribute more to their own defense, which would have prevented this, in my opinion. Ukraine wasn't better off keeping the nukes, and that the Oval Office debacle was they were wrong on multiple sides.
Who was wrong on multiple sides?
I think Trump was wrong for the way he handled it, and mishearing Zelensky. Vance, I think, was just being a dick, and Zelensky, if he knew all that prior, shouldn't have been litigated or shouldn't have brought it up, and shouldn't have made like said the ocean comment.
I agree with the ocean comment. I don't know how much else.
Well, I think he said something about the they be not as good in the position or whatever on the nukes, but
Yeah, it's not as simple as people make it out to be. Well,
no.
good
Yeah,
talking to
well,
you. Okay, man. You have a good one, okay?
yep. And if you do go over there, man, stay safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Okay. How you guys doing?